Hi, Matthew. How are you?
I'm good, Rachel. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. To start with this movie, it balances between kind of the area in the South where you have kind of the very rich elite and then the people who kind of end up not having the luxury of living in the richer areas of the South. And when you are finding that balance, how'd you kind of navigate getting into the finding the areas, not like filming locations, but making sure that you were paying homage feels like the wrong word, but like making sure you were being truthful to like that kind of dynamic that does exist when you get into like the deeper South of the US.
Absolutely. Um, that's what I just told somebody that there's really no middle class in like rural South. There is the lower class and the upper class. And, I was lucky enough to actually show that through a river. There's this side of the river and there's that side of the river. And, you know, luckily my locations actually were on the same exact river. And it was very important to me to actually show that there one side of that river cost $15,000 and the other side of that river costs $2 million. And
Mhm.
it's just where people stay. And it's like an unwritten rule that nobody talks about.
And I think with this movie in particular, the way I really like the dialogues. I think, especially with movies set in the South, there's that kind of it's the South, everyone's going to talk really slow. And I do like that the dialogue is not slow at all. Everyone talks very fast for it being a movie in the South and being called Dirty South. And when you are kind of like breaking that stereotype in a way with this, and you have, people like Shane West, who is famous arguably for a movie that is set in the South, because, What Walk to Remember is all about this Southern boy. Um, were you like aware of that and kind of breaking it with having them talk at in a pace that is kind of, pushing a
Well, of
stereotype
course, of
that
course,
is
that
so
was that was the one thing that I kept in mind the entire time of writing and the entire time shooting is like I did not want a fake Southern accent.
mm,
I despise this. I despise them. But one of the easiest ways to do that was by writing the exact way that we talk. Uh, there's a lot of we drop certain letters. We drop the G on every ing. If it's looking, it's looking, and it's little. I kept that throughout it. We don't always say your, we say yeah, and the way that I wrote it was to actually so it could roll off of their tongues and not seem forced. And so Shane West, he's from Baton Rouge. He was actually born there, lived till he was 10 years old. So when we started looking at him, it was like that. This guy's perfect. It's like this is the guy we can because he will read this and it will roll right off his tongue as it did.
when it's
Willa did actually very very incredible too. I she only came on board 1 week before we started shooting, so she didn't have the script for very long, and I really got to hear her Southern accent in the editing process, and I was just very impressed. It wasn't forced, and that's what she would literally read when she read the words that were written. She sounded completely Southern.
When it's cool too, and it's very I didn't realize I did this, but it's like her costumes made me very happy because I was a transplant. I moved there when I moved to North Carolina. I was in high school and went to college there and then moved. But I'm literally wearing like she had on like a tank top and then like a jacket because it was cold. It's the South, but it was cold. And I'm literally wearing a sweater and like a tank top thing. And I was like, oh, I kind of unintentionally did it when I got dressed this morning because I'm in New York. I'm like, but and it's freezing. And I was like, this is fine. But that is kind of the this of how people get dressed on there. They're like, this is fine. And you're like, no, it's not. It's cold. You put on warm clothes. But it is such a way of like, that is kind of how people think of like, nah, it's gonna be like, I don't know, maybe 70 degrees later. Let me just put on a tank top. And when you are making a movie that is so kind of back and forth, because it is it's the South. It's in the title of this movie. And you're putting all of these different elements together to bring together an area that is like I do like that this movie breaks down so many different stereotypes because it's like the accent, how everyone talks, how people dress and interact, and you're like very clearly like thinking of all those elements. Is something like, you know, the costumes and the way people dress, is that still on your guys' mind too?
Of
Because
course.
that costume was so funny to me because I'm like, yeah, that is something that people do. They wear a tank top and a giant coat.
Yeah. And like I will say that the coats were never, it wasn't part of the plan. This was supposed to be a summer movie, and uh it was a summer script, but we couldn't get all four actors available until the end of November. And so 3 days before we start shooting, Louisiana plummets to 29 degrees, and that is freezing in the swamp. And so we had to completely change the wardrobe in our last 3 days. And we kept the tank top, but we like it was Willa's idea. Willa just said, "Is like, this is something I would absolutely do. I would literally just throw a jacket on over this tank top because it could get warm inside." I was like, "That's perfect," and we rolled with it.
No, I love that. That's hilarious. But I do like that this movie kind of switches because like when it started, I was like, I don't know what I'm getting myself into, but I do like that it becomes like a let's do crime and get money. Like I like when they switched to that. It like a third of the way into this movie and became like a crime drama romance. Uh and just that's kind of like where it's at for the majority of it in the midst of like, you know, Dermot Mulroney having fun. And when you're writing this and you are playing against these stereotypes, but also still like being a crime drama, what were like the biggest things that you as a writer and a director really kind of wanted to focus on and like tackle and bring to life? Because it is so many moving parts that really work all together when you're watching this.
One of the biggest approaches that I talked with Jess Dunlap, he's our DP, was that the film takes place over 3 days, and
Mhm.
she has no time. So I wanted this camera to constantly be moving. It wasn't a lot of still shots from the second act on. We when she starts moving, she's either following us or we're following her. And I wanted to show the chaos of what it's gonna like, what she's willing to go through in 3 days to make sure that her brother's gonna have a house over his head. And through that chaos, like I brought it, I bring the chaos is faster and faster until the last 5 minutes of the film, whenever it really stops and then really actually we learn how the film ends. Like I just wanted to bring people on a ride, to start it off a little slow, it starts speeding up, and all of a sudden we are at full speeds until we stop, and we reveal how this did she make it or not.
Yeah, and it is too, I think it's funny because I'm like I'm 5'3" and to see Willa Holland, who is not a big person, uh grab like in the beginning of this movie, grab some frat boys. The frat boy character was maybe my favorite character because I couldn't get a read on this kid because he thought he was a tough guy, and every time someone yelled at him or punched him or got him in trouble, he would apologize immediately because Will Holland, he says something to her and she grabs his wrist and he goes, "I'm sorry, ma'am," and leaves. And then when Jane West later in this movie punches him, he goes, "I'm so sorry, sir," and apologizes. So I do have a question about this specific character. What was his deal?
What's funny is like neither one of those sorries were written. It was like the yes ma'am was written. It was to show Willa's power, and to show Sue's power whenever she grabs his hand and says, "Hey, get it together, get out of here," and he says yes ma'am. But the sorry to in the fight, I think it just I scared him to death. I think so.
Because I loved him so much. I was like, what is this guy's deal? Because I was like, oh, I liked when he like immediately apologized to her because I was like, oh, that's so cool to like see her power. And in the fight with Shane West, and I was like, I don't know what this guy's deal is. Like, he's just apologizing to
He's
everyone.
just looking for trouble, but he doesn't really want it.
And he's like, oh, I'm tough. No, I'm not. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to apologize. I don't want to be in this fight anymore. I'm so sorry. I do love him. I love this town of like just people that are like so
It's
weird.
very real. And I'm
Yeah.
telling you, like, what's beautiful about it is that so much of the other characters, and all the background, like that's where they're from here. They're from
Mhm.
Natchitoches, Louisiana. I had two locals, actually three locals, have lines in the film. One of my best friends is the singer in the bar, and I mean he's Spencer Brunson's an incredible talent, and it was just good to be able to add like a real, it's a real song that is around here. I wanted to make this as authentic as possible because I just, again, Southern accents and Southern films, I want them done to actually really showcase how the South is.
Yeah. And it works. And I think it's just like a fun and interesting film to see that is not like sometimes these like when you see films you're like what is this going to be, and then like it was very interesting to actually like go on this crime drama and see where it was going, and like not like, the ending is so much fun because you're like that's not at all where I thought it was going to end up. And for you, what do you hope audiences take away when they get to see the Dirty South?
Man, I do. I want to take audiences for a ride, but I also just want them to know that, you know, family, they just always got you back. And it doesn't matter where your family, they could be bad people, they could be at a terrible place in their life right there. But it just whenever, push comes to shove and the shit hits the fans, like your family's gonna have you back. And that's definitely the way it always is in the South.
Yeah. Thank you so much for talking with me today. I hope people enjoy the movie. I did write in my letterbox review. I hope that Shane West takes her and makes her stand on a state line, and so that she's in two places at once, because that's something I think about every single time I drive over a state line because of Shane West. And I watch this movie, I was like, I hope he does it. Just
That's amazing. I'm going to be seeing him in 2 days. I'll tell him you said that.
I think about it constantly. I'm like, it's a walk to remember. It's two places at once. I do it every single time. Can't stop. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great one.
You too.
Bye.